today because we've got a lot of information to cover, and I think you guys are going to have some questions. We're going to be talking about countertops, but before we do that, let me kind of back up and give you a little introduction and let you know a little bit about what's going on over here at Notting Hill Interiors. So I am Kimberly Grigg, and I am a designer of many, many years, and I create mostly residential designs. However, we do delve into the commercial world here and there. Recent projects included my favorite Dr. John Eisman's dentist office. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty darn incredible. We also renovated the Dunes Club Pro Shop, which was also a really beautiful project. We also just did some bathrooms for them as well. So, we kind of are versed in both, and I enjoy both just because of the diversity and certainly breaks the day up a little bit and, different set of resources, even a little bit different approach to the design world. Something else that I've been really developing and having fun with is I have been creating and teaching classes online, which sort of puts me in a mentor role. I really love teaching because it gives you a chance to break down your craft very well into very specific components. And my brain sort of works like that anyway, so it was sort of a fun way to really dive into what it is I do and how I create and why that has been a successful process for me. If you're interested in participating in some of our classes, well, it's easy to do. One of them is actually free. It's our How to Be a Color Boss class. And it's all about the world of color and creating color schemes. And you access it by hopping over to KimberlyGriggDesign.com. And you just put in your email address there. And lo and behold, it will pop up in your inbox, and that will get you going. If you like learning in that fashion, well, then you can dive way, way deeper into my overall fundamentals course. And both are a lot of fun, and we even have a private Facebook group that I come on and I dive a little deeper than I do here on Thursdays. And anyway, check all that out because, gee, it's fun. Now, if you don't know, we have just undergone a major move and downsize. And I just got to ask, have any of you moved recently or have any of you downsized recently? I am here to tell you that is no small feat. It's kind of interesting because I've been helping people downsize just because of the market in which I live, Myrtle Beach. I've been helping people downsize since the beginning of my business. And it certainly comes easy to me when I'm assisting someone with that task. And I'm really good about helping people purge and let go of things that they don't need. But, I found myself with this move because it's a business in the category of what do you do with these things that are no longer useful to you? And I don't know. And we've had to make some really tough decisions. And just when we get things all rocking and rolling, well, we then get a big shipment. So that has been kind of fun. And we've been accustomed to having so much space in which to work that we sort of took it for granted. And now we're in limited space and you really have to conserve. So again, it's been a lot of fun, but I will tell you, it has also been a lot of headaches and a lot of worries and a lot of sleepless nights lately. So I think we are all situated now, and hello, Donna and Janet. Good to have you here. And we're going to dive in to this week's topic. And I rather like this topic. It's a lot of information. And in fact, you'll see me refer to my notes a little bit today because I don't want to leave any of this out. It's super, super important. And what we're talking about are countertops and really how to take the guesswork out of countertops. You know, countertops can be the elephant in a room, and they take up so much space so that if you miss the mark on a countertop, well, you can destroy an entire design. So it's really important to understand certain things about countertops so that you know how to make the right decision. Now, these things are not glamorous. It's not about color. It's about sort of the non-sexy things, which include budget, durability, how easy it is to clean and maintain a countertop, whether or not the countertop is heat resistant, and of course, what the countertop is made of. So those types of things really weigh heavily in making a good decision. And this is really even beyond the aesthetic part of it. So Janet says, upscale consign for those items. Then I purchased new antiques or pieces. I downsized 9 months ago, full-time job. That is so true. And if you're just hopping on, we've just been talking about how my business has been going through a downsize transition and how difficult that can be. So yes, thanks for that tip, Janet. So when we're talking about countertops, I first want to address man-made versus man-made and synthetic countertops, because you kind of need to understand the man-made versions versus natural stones. So are synthetic countertops a good idea? Well, of course they can be. And sometimes we use synthetics really because of a budget. So, for example, laminate or formica, you may be familiar with that term. It's all the same. But, you know, when should you use a laminate? And I have to say, it's not my favorite tool, but I will say that laminate has come a long way since its brothers of the past. And there's a lot of new patterns, a lot of new designs. I'm not necessarily a fan of choosing a laminate that is supposed to mimic or be a faux version of a stone. Instead, I tend to choose something that's a little more textural or a little more interesting because I'm not really into faux. I would much prefer that if we choose a laminate, that we choose a laminate that is going to do a job in and of itself. Now, laminate is, of all the countertops I'm going to point out today, is the most budget friendly. It is made of plastic, which is adhered to a particle board. And again, the products are better looking today. Wilson Art makes a really pretty set aesthetically of laminate countertops. And I have to say, there's some really neat ones in the Formica brand as well. Now, a couple of things that you want to be cautious about with countertops is laminate is not heat resistant, and it does tend to scorch and scratch. Chemicals also can be problematic. So you want to keep that in mind, and you would have to determine whether or not the budget outweighs the maintenance of a countertop such as this. I recently specified laminate for a condo that I'm working on, and I even had a hard time finding someone who can install it for me. So it's just not nearly as popular as it once was. However, the dental office that I mentioned early on today, I did use laminate in some of their back areas. And I did that because it was a budget requirement and we went all out on other spaces. So it was a way that I could rob Peter and pay Paul. So sometimes, you might want to go with a laminate choice because budget is a particular concern, and perhaps it's in a room that you don't use that often, which could be a craft room, could be a laundry room, something of that nature. Now, another synthetic countertop that is sometimes used, not nearly as much as it once was, and that is porcelain. So porcelain can be made from glass or ceramic and or other materials. It certainly can be affordable. It's heat and scratch resistant, and most chemicals are okay to use with a porcelain. The biggest drawback to me are grout lines, and I tend to use porcelain more for a backsplash than a countertop in general. So you also want to watch if you're using some sort of porcelain to make sure that there's no foil backing on it, because that isn't heat resistant. Sometimes some of the glass pieces that we use have been used as countertops but have also been used as backsplashes. Sometimes there's a foil barrier, and that foil can tend to turn yellow, and it can also look scorched. So porcelain is an option. It's just not an option that we use much in today's design world in terms of a countertop. I even once at a cabin that my husband and I own used actual rock stone for a countertop in this cabin, and it was lovely, but I didn't take into account how porous it was. So that was not necessarily it was certainly a cool idea. It just wasn't necessarily an idea that was easy maintenance. So another thing that you can use as a countertop is butcher block. And butcher block can be expensive or it can be inexpensive. It just depends on the size of it, how it's put together. Butcher block can be gorgeous in the right space. It really, truly can. I use butcher block often in a pantry because it's a little more budget friendly than stone. And sometimes I just think it's kind of charming to mix up your materials. It is heat resistant, but it can scorch. It also can scratch. Think about your butcher block cutting boards and how you have to maintain them. You typically maintain them with an oil, so you have to be a little bit careful. Butcher block is actually made by putting together wood with an adhesive, and so because of that, it's not that great with chemicals. So if you choose butcher block, you do want to choose with care, and you want to have a specific look going on that really works with the butcher block. So, and then one of the really trending, happening synthetic material right now is quartz. And it is the current rage. It is beautiful, um, especially if it's installed properly. So you might have been seeing in magazines or Pinterest or whatever, you may have been seeing a lot of islands have a waterfall look. That means that there's a countertop and then it runs all the way down the side. That's called a waterfall installation. And you may have seen in some photos where you, or maybe you've done it in your own home, but where it's a deep lip on the edge of the countertop. And I've had big difficulty finding someone who can install this properly. You don't want to allow someone to fuse it together because you'll see the seam. It's actually fused together, if you can see my hands, at a 90-degree angle, and then that's caulked. And you do use extra material, and some would say there's some waste involved. There is, but it certainly does make for a pretty finish on that type of material. Now, it is very modern and contemporary, so you will want to keep that in mind. You can get it with a lot of veining. It has been really popular because where granite has a lot of veining and busy movement, this particular material, you can get it with a little movement, but you can get it without a lot of movement. So there's a lot of variety in the way that it appears, and I think it's one of the things that make it so intriguing. Do not think that it is less expensive than quartzite, marble, or granite, because it's not. It's just as much. It does really respond well to um, heat. So you don't have to worry about heat so much. You also don't have to worry about chemicals. It can scratch. It doesn't scratch easily, but it can scratch. So you would want to beware of that. I think all in all, it is a very good polished look. I specify quartz often when I'm going for more of a modern, clean, transitional look. So now let's consider products that are natural. And the first that comes to mind is soapstone. Soapstone is one that you don't really hear that much about. It is beautiful. It's kind of a bronzy gray color typically. um, you do want to be very wary of the maintenance. Soapstone gets a cloudy film on it, and it definitely can be affected by harsh chemicals. It's not as pricey as some of the other natural stones, but it is heat resistant, but it does scratch actually pretty easily. So if you're going to use soapstone as a countertop, you really want to use it in a space that is off the beaten path. Or unless you have a home that you're going for more of a rustic look and you just happen to be okay with what can happen with that kind of stone. It is going to look patinaed probably the second day you have it. Actually, when everyone was doing all of the rustic decor, farmhouse slash rustic style, I call it rustic chic in a way. When people were doing that, we had on our retail sales floor a lot of coffee tables that had soapstone as its top, and nothing in our inventory scratched worse than that soapstone. I don't want to scare you, but I do want you to be cautious. It is beautiful, but it is not necessarily the most durable. So then there is quartzite. And quartzite is not to be confused with quartz. Quartz is man-made synthetic. Quartzite is not. So quartzite is a stone. It is lately my stone of choice. Here's what I really love about it. So where granite has all of this movement and is very, very busy, quartzite has a broader realm of color, and quartzite doesn't have as much busyness. So it looks more like a solid surface, and yet there is some movement in it. There's some of them even have some sparkle in them, and which is really crystals. And it's a very strong stone, and it basically performs like granite. However, it has the magical appearance more of marble. So it's sort of a cross between the two. I really love working with quartzite. It's absolutely beautiful. It is heat resistant. It's unaffected by harsh chemicals. And again, aesthetically, it's probably one of the most beautiful stones that you can acquire right now. Now, when I say heat resistant, I do want to caution you. Hi, Anne. Hi, Paula. I do want to caution you a little bit about heat resistant. Just because it's heat resistant, there is no stone that you should actually put a hot pot on. People might say that you can, but really and truly, you're setting yourself up for damaging the stone, weakening the stone, and it's just not, in general, a great idea. I say still use your trivets and don't risk it. I don't really like to cut on stone either, even though some people say that you can. I've not had great luck with that because the stone actually does scratch or can scratch. So don't, I wouldn't chance it. It's a very big expense to have to replace a stone. Although there have been times when we've polished stone to get a stain out or to get a scratch out. You know, there are some things you can do besides replacing it. So another natural stone that I want to talk about is marble. Marble is highly controversial. And I have used marble on countertops. I have used marble a lot. However, I will say it is softer, weaker than a quartzite and a granite. It is porous. They're all a little porous. We'll get to that in a minute. But it's weaker and it doesn't accept chemicals well. So this has kind of always been a funny thing to me. I've always been able to, people will say to me that they would like to use marble in their master bath, but they don't want it in their kitchen. Well, actually, the master bath would be the place I wouldn't use it because of chemicals. Think about hairspray. Hairspray will dull marble just like that. Think about all the chemicals that are involved in a bathroom that are going right on that stone. And I just don't think that it is durable enough. It's certainly beautiful enough, but it's not durable enough for a bathroom, in my opinion. I still do it because that's what people want sometimes. I have used marble as kitchen countertops before, but I do so with a little trepidation and a lot of warning, and mainly for those clients who don't have a cook's kitchen or use their kitchen all that much. Because it is heat resistant, but it's not stain resistant and it's not chemical resistant. So that does pose a few problems. So, and then this brings me to granite. And granite was all the rage a few years back, and I think that granite is a lovely stone, but it's very limiting. I feel that the busyness of the pattern is a bit much for today's marketplace, which tends to lean a little more to a more streamlined look. And the busyness of the stone doesn't quite work with that as well, which is one of the reasons why quartz is trending so much right now. And to be fair, most people don't understand quartzite and know the components of quartzite, so they just naturally gravitate to quartz. So, but granite is, of all of the categories, it hits on all cylinders, including you can find some budget friendly granite. And granite is rated in levels. So you'll have a level 1, a level 2, level 3, blah, blah, all the way up to exotic. And some of the level 1s are very inexpensive, but with that comes, a little bit more dated colors and stone that is more readily available. So it's certainly not as unusual as what you might find in a quartzite or even a quartz. So a couple of things that you do want to remember when working with countertops. Let's talk a second about the edging of a countertop. Now, I can do a whole live just on the edging and why you choose what you choose. But with edging, you'll hear your contractor, builder, installer, fabricator say, well, what sort of edge do you want? And the least expensive and the most common and the easiest to do, especially if you have a stone. If you have a stone that has a lot of crystals in it, it is a little bit weaker. And sometimes you have to treat a weaker stone with the simplest of procedures in terms of fabrication. And if you do that, then you'll want to consider bullnose. And bullnose is just your sort of semicircle round edging and very attractive. It's certainly acceptable to do a bullnose finish on an exquisite stone for sure, because you're going to want to notice the stone a little bit more than the edge itself. There's lots of them. The most common are bullnose. One that I often use is called an OG edge. And so it has a little dip in it on top of the bullnose. And there's a double OG that I really like, which dips on the top and the bottom. And I think that's quite pretty. I tend to use bullnose on the perimeter of a kitchen, and I just save a little bit of budget there. And then I tend to use an OG or a double OG on an island when I have the opportunity, and it really does make a beautiful look. If you're going to edge out a quartz, just kind of refer back to what I said earlier. I prefer a deep, at least 5-inch edge, but no seam. Make sure that you are working with your fabricator to not have a seam. There's nothing worse than that deep edge and then a seam running right down the middle of it. Now, most countertops are fairly porous, no matter the material, with the exception of laminate. So you do want to seal them properly. This is an entire post as well, but it's important to follow the instructions that correspond to the product that you're using. when you're using some of the natural stones, then there are some cleaners that have sealer in them. And so every time you clean the countertop, you are sealing it so that you don't have to constantly repeat having someone come into your home every 6 months to a year to professionally seal. Um, I've had very good luck with these kinds of products, and I've really not had any problem or even had to take care of anything other than occasionally a client will spill red wine on a marble or even on a quartzite, and it can be a little tricky to get it out. With marble, I've had to polish it out with a professional machine before, but it is possible. And if you're working with a professional, then you don't have to really worry about damaging the stone, and it'll just take it back to its original color. So now we have a little time for Q&A. I didn't go over concrete, so before we jump into Q&A, I will tell you I have used concrete countertops. Um, it You really have to be careful because they crack, so you want to use a professional installer for sure. I wouldn't use concrete in a climate where the temperature changed to extremes because that further creates cracking. But I've only used concrete a couple of times, and so I'm not as versed as I am in the other materials, but perhaps some of you have had good luck with this. I like the way it looks, but I've always been a little bit afraid of what happens in 5 or 10 years. And there's not enough information in the marketplace to make me feel 100% good about recommending this unless a client specifically says, I really want concrete countertops. So anyway, tell me what all you have done and what products you have worked with and had success with. Let's see here. See if I have any questions. So Lisa says she is considering countertops of one stone on the perimeter of her room and then using a different stone on the center island. Is this a good idea? So that would mean two different stones in one kitchen or two different materials in one kitchen. I am not a fan unless the kitchen is delineated and unless the kitchen is large enough to handle the compromise of that. So for me, I feel like why vary it? I'd much rather vary the edging and keep the stone consistent. Again, unless there's a reason to delineate specific areas in a kitchen. And when that happens, the kitchen is usually quite sizable. So hope that helps. So someone says here, what is my preference between quartz and quartzite? Well, I'm not really as much a fan of quartz as I am quartzite. Quartzite is a natural stone and quartz is man-made synthetic. I have created beautiful countertops, kitchens, rooms by using both products. So more than anything, it's a matter of preference. And I feel like quartzite is a little more durable than quartz, but there's not that big of a difference in terms of the maintenance. So I think that either is okay. I just happen to love quartzite specifically. So Lisa says, love this information. Thank you. So appreciate the clarity. You're welcome. I do hope that these kinds of things help you. This is perfect for someone who is undergoing a kitchen renovation, or if someone is considering building. This kind of information really does come in handy. Paula says, great info. So good. I'm glad that that helped. So has anyone used anything unusual as a countertop that I didn't mention? I'd love to know about it, and you can post now or you can post later, but it always helps to share this kind of information because, you're obviously here for a reason. You obviously are a design enthusiast, and when you follow the world of design, it is, as you may know, a forever changing world. And we constantly look for new surfaces, new products that we can use on an ongoing basis. Like I say, I was wacky enough to use this dry stack stone. I just didn't stack it. I laid it flat on some countertops in a cabin. And I have to tell you, it was beautiful. But, you know, it was a rough countertop, so putting anything on it that needed stability didn't make a whole lot of sense. And durability wise, it was quite porous and there was a lot of grout lines. And so keeping it clean was not so easy. And actually, what ended up happening is we had a flood at that property, the last flood in Myrtle Beach, and it disintegrated the cabinetry in that cabinet or in that cabin, and we had to remove it. So we removed the countertops, and I'm just getting around to replacing all of that. And I'm not sure yet what I'm going to use. It's a well used space, and I actually may use granite. I'm just not sure, especially if I can find an exotic that is not too crazy, but yet is really different looking. So we'll see. So Janet says, new Cambria kitchen countertop. Love the blue veining. Installer was from Myrtle Beach and insisted I had to have a mitered corner seam. I was hugely disappointed. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Um, that is the tough thing with these quartz countertops. By the way, Cambria is a brand, just like just think of it's just a brand. So Cambria makes a quartz, and they make some beautiful pieces, and in fact, some of the prettiest I have seen. And but I will honestly say, with quartz, it's all in the installation. The whole thing is in the installation. And if I were installing quartz for someone, not only am I going to check out my fabricator, but I want to see the work. And I want to see an example of the work done with the finish or the edge that I'm specifying. And I would pass before I would sacrifice that. So it sounds like, Janet, that's kind of what happened to you. And I don't know why that material is so hard to fabricate. The seams are really tricky, but I've not had a whole lot of great luck with fabrication. And maybe someone in my area will see this and tell me that they're excellent at it, and I'll have a new resource for it. So Amber says she loves granite. I do too. And I will tell you, this is a little thing that you can do when using granite that I think is kind of fun. So wherever you're procuring your stone from, and this is something you need to know. First of all, you don't want to just get a stone off of a sample chip because there's so many variations. There's a stone called Fantasy Brown. Sometimes it's green, sometimes it's almost white, sometimes it's brown, and there is a Fantasy Blue as well. And Fantasy Brown can have blue and green in it. So it grows, it's natural. So you want to go pick your slabs. You find out from your fabricator how many slabs you need, and then you go and pick those slabs. Now, typically, if you're picking slabs that are beside each other, then they're all going to have come out of the same quarry, the same basic area in the quarry, so that they're gonna look alike, and that's what you want. And then sometimes I've had something that had like a really big vein in it, and I didn't like it, and I was able to cut around it. So you do always want to pick your stone. And then the second thing that you can consider, if you have a small space, say it's a small laundry room, say it is a small countertop. I do this sometimes on pieces of furniture. I will put a stone countertop on top of the piece of furniture instead of a piece of glass to protect it, but I think it sort of elevates it a little bit. But if you have a small powder room or a small bathroom, well, then you can use remnants. And remnants are about half price per square foot of what you're going to find. And it's really kind of nice because you get a bargain. But a lot of times I have found gorgeous exotic pieces that were left over as remnants. And an exotic in a small space is absolutely beautiful. So, and by exotic, I mean something that you don't often see. It typically has some big pattern in it or some unusual coloration in some way. And if you go looking for stone or you're sourcing stone, then just ask wherever you're shopping to show you where their exotics are. And some vendors have lots of them and some have very few, if any. So Janet says, wish I did that. My sink is gorgeous and is a distraction. Yes. We're seeing right now a lot of stone sinks, and I actually just specified, and I have two left, um, these petrified stone sinks, and we're using them as vessel sinks in powder rooms. They're quite beautiful and is really interesting, and the coloration is gorgeous, and they're already cut and shaped like a sink, but I had my fabricator cut the hole for the drainage. And so that's, again, just designers we're always searching for unusual things like this that we can work with that is a different material. And I happened to come across these sinks at High Point Market a couple of markets ago, and I had them in the store and no one really understood them. So now I'm specifying them on some jobs and with great success. So, all right, guys. Well, we are nearing the end of today's live. I do want to invite you to hop over to KimberlyGriggDesign.com and check out what we have going on there. Our Notting Hill Interiors page is also live still, our website, and we have new packages on our Notting Hill Interiors page. So check out what we have going on there. And thank you so much for joining me as always. And I love it when you're here. And I am here each and every Thursday with a design topic on It's Time to Design, 4 o'clock on Thursdays. I'll see you next week.